Good evening and welcome back to Sports Talk ATL. I am Chase Earl, joined by Alex Sword. We have a ton to talk about today. Finally, the Atlanta Falcons had their press conference with Raheem Morris. He was hired, it feels like almost 2 weeks ago. I don't know why it was so long. I really do not know. Maybe it was just because he was moving across the country. But we got a ton of good stuff to talk about there. Terry Fontenot talks about his role with the Falcons in the hiring process, how much Rich McKay was involved, talks about that relationship. Very interesting stuff. And is Zach Robinson the next Kyle Shanahan and Sean McVay? Raheem Morris seems to think so. But Alex, I want to talk to you about your initial reactions to Raheem Morris. I feel like if you check on social media, if you check from the Falcons media, it was all positive at Flowery Branch, or they were actually at Mercedes-Benz Stadium for the press conference. What was your initial reaction to just what you saw yesterday?
I think my reaction was the same as everybody's. When the hire was announced, it was met with universal praise among his former colleagues in terms of coaches, players he coached. And I think Falcons fans had the same reaction after his introductory press conference, kind of a reintroduction because he spent so many years here in Atlanta. I had the same takeaway. And I did write a blog about it. Go check it out on the site, sportstalkatl.com. That it just felt like there was a gray cloud over Flowery Branch, or in this case, Mercedes-Benz Stadium, with Arthur Smith. And it was just the way that he interacted with the media and therefore the fans, because the media is kind of an extension of the fans. They act as our mouthpiece, so to speak. And Raheem Morris was the exact opposite. It was all sunshines and rainbows. And granted, this is a results-oriented business, but from the first, the first moments that we get to know our new head coach, it was a resounding success. And from my eyes, it just felt like he wasn't dancing around questions like we knew Arthur Smith to do. He was direct. He was transparent. He radiated, positive energy, which is a breath of fresh air from what, Falcons fans have become used to with an Arthur Smith who kind of gave off that, Bill Belichick-esque, I don't need to answer your questions. And therefore, Falcons fans felt a little bit like, he was treating us like we weren't worth a damn. And I know that's not the case. That's just how Falcons fans took it.
Yeah, this is what I expected. I expected Raheem Morris, who's well-liked by players, coaches, everyone, always has a bright attitude. You mentioned the transparency. I thought that was huge. And yeah, it's a stark contrast from Arthur Smith. So I expected him to come in there and nail this press conference, and that's exactly what he did. Now, nailing press conferences is a lot different than winning football games, so I'm not going to sit here. But this is what I expected, and this is what I continue to expect. People are going to like Raheem Morris every time he gets in front of the mic. That's the case with his players, his coaches. Everybody likes this dude. There's a reason, and you saw that on full display in his opening press conference. If I had to say one thing that he said, and I don't mean to put you on the spot, but one thing that really stood out to you outside of the radiation, something that he said that really stood out to you in that Monday press conference.
He didn't really say it in exactly, but he alluded to or signaled the end of the Desmond Ridder era. And I know that's not exactly groundbreaking news, but I had to write a blog about it, that Desmond Ridder was not going to be an option in 2024. And the reason why I had to write it is because I saw people on social media, Falcons fans, talking about, what if, playing the what if game, that Zach Robinson is this, godsend. He can, make lemonade out of lemons with Desmond Ridder. And the fact is that is just absolutely not the case. And basically, Raheem Morris, in as many words, basically signaled the end of the Desmond Ridder era, which, again, it's not groundbreaking news, but it's just nice to know the Falcons are going to be in the market for a quarterback upgrade in the coming months.
Yeah, I think the biggest thing that stood out, and if you watch the press conference, he said this word collaboration probably 15 to 20 times. And I think the biggest thing about more than anything was just kind of his rapport already that he had with Terry Fontenot. It kind of seemed like those guys knew each other for like 15, 20 years. Like they seemed like best friends. Now, whether they are or whether that's just, in front of the cameras, who knows? But he talked about Les Snead. He talked about his relationship with Sean McVay, and Raheem Morris said he was jealous of that relationship. And then you see Raheem Morris and Terry Fontenot up there on stage. Seems like two guys that are genuinely very excited to work with each other. I think most Falcons fans have a lot of respect for Terry Fontenot. I think they're starting to earn a lot of respect, whether they had it or not, for Raheem Morris. And I think those two guys have a lot of respect for each other. So when we're talking about this black cloud that was over that you mentioned, it's the Rich McKay, it's the Arthur Blank having all this control over football decisions. Well, if Terry Fontenot and Raheem Morris are the guys pulling the strings and they're doing it in this collaborative effort, you kind of feel a little more optimistic about where this team's going compared to where they have been over the last 3 years.
Yeah, I'm cautiously optimistic. It was very evident that the two men, Raheem Morris and Terry Fontenot, at least on a surface level, again, they don't know each other that well, are gravitating towards each other. And to kind of expand on that, Raheem Morris basically said he was jealous of Sean McVay's and Les Snead's relationship, how it was just a effortless relationship, how they worked in lockstep, what one needed and the other catered. And when one needed to be picked up, the other one was there, and vice versa. And that's how a head coach and GM relationship should be. Now, with that being said, I do want to preface what I'm about to say that by all accounts, Arthur Smith was a good man and a good head coach in terms of the people who worked with him. Arthur Blank spoke glowingly about him. Players have gone out in public and said great things about him. We know former Falcons players that have nothing but good things to say about Arthur Smith. The fact is on a surface level, from a PR standpoint, which is all Falcons fans have. That's all fans have in general, is PR and kind of what the media gives us. It was all crap from what the fans said. It didn't look like Arthur Smith was very happy to be there, and it's a stressful job. And Raheem Morris hasn't had many stressful, tasks yet. It was just an introduction, but it felt like more free flowing. And Terry Fontenot is the perfect example of that. I wish we had a picture with him next to, there's that hilarious meme of him and Arthur Blank sitting in the box. I don't remember which game it was, and he just looks absolutely miserable. I think that shows you just how, a presence can impact a organization like Raheem Morris, that just the facial expressions and the way that Fontenot is already just obviously overjoyed to be working with this guy. It speaks volumes about who Raheem Morris is as a person. Again, results-oriented business. Let's hold our tongues until we start wins and losses. But early returns.
I saw a lot of those takes talking about how he looks so much happier with Raheem and stuff. And I don't know. I don't really put too much weight. I can't imagine.
No. That's why I preface with Arthur Smith is a great guy.
I do think, there's probably a better connection in terms of just their personalities and stuff like that. Yeah, I don't think there's any doubt about that, but I don't think Terry Fontenot was disappointed working with Arthur Smith or anything.
No, listen, subconsciously, your face tells me all I need to know.
Yeah, I do agree. Like I said, the rapport between him and Raheem Morris was clear as day. Whether it was, things you saw on social media about them talking up there in the press conference, they fed off each other. I thought it was fantastic. It makes you excited. And one thing, just speaking back to that Les Snead, Sean McVay relationship, I know I brought this up, I think last week, but I'm telling you, if you haven't found it on Twitter, go look it up. Where him and Sean McVay are talking about drafting Puka Nacua in the fifth round, and you can just see that made me jealous. I'm not even that big of a football guy. Just the way they had their rapport. Les Snead knew, hey, Sean, you got a guy like this. I know you know how to utilize them. And Sean's like, oh yeah, I know how to utilize it. This guy's going to be a star. Obviously, Puka Nacua turns into one of the best rookie wide receivers we've ever seen, and he was taken in the fifth round. So that's the kind of working relationship. If you want to see a demonstration that those two had, that, Terry Fontenot and Raheem Morris are trying to build in Atlanta.
Yeah, just to kind of speak on that as well. Some fans might not follow it as closely, but the working relationship is basically Raheem Morris and Terry Fontenot, front office, coaching staff. And basically, they have to communicate each other's needs to one another. And obviously, if you can do that well, the product generally is going to be better. So let's say, Terry Fontenot it would start with Raheem Morris and his coaching staff in terms of, let's say, a quarterback. We need this for the quarterback in terms of what Zach Robinson needs physically. In terms of intangibles, this is what we want as our leader. And then at that point, it's Terry Fontenot and his front office's job to go find several candidates, whether it be free agency, trade, or, in the draft, and saying, these are who we have. This is what we think is work. And obviously there's some disconnect with some franchises when those things don't come to fruition. And as you mentioned, when it does work, like in the Rams case, it does work more often than not. Yeah. You see how beautiful it can be.
You wonder if there was disconnect between Arthur Smith and Terry Fontenot and Desmond Ridder last year. Yeah. I mean, you want to talk about a big decision that maybe those two guys didn't agree on behind the scenes. You have to wonder. Coming up after the break, we're going to talk a little bit about Terry Fontenot, who spoke on his role in the hiring process and the whole Rich McKay thing, the things we've been talking about for the last several weeks. He kind of gave some clarity to those situations.